Community members are taking a stand trying to fight radicalization efforts, and now there is a new handbook to help many others do the same. It was put together by the RCMP and members of the Islamic community. Joining us right now, let's bring in Ihsaan Gardee, the Executive Director of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, and he's in Winnipeg. Mr. Gardee, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me on, Jacqueline.
Tell us about this handbook, and first, who is it really aimed at? Is it for parents? Is it for teachers? Is it for members of the community?
Okay, well, this handbook, just to correct the understanding, this was not an RCMP publication. This was a community-driven initiative that was the brainchild of Shahina Siddiqui at the Islamic Social Services Association, and she worked in collaboration with our organization, and the RCMP were consulted to get their feedback and their input on what exactly the role of the RCMP is in national security to help Canadian Muslims and Canadian Muslim communities understand the role of the RCMP in national security. The handbook itself is meant as a guide for various sectors and various levels, including teachers, including parents, community leaders, and so forth, to help them to better understand the phenomenon of radicalization towards criminal violence and what it is, to understand it and how to best address it. And it's important as well for them to understand the difference between radicalization and radicalization towards criminal violence, where the person then takes the step forward or moves from simply having radical views to espousing or endorsing or supporting violence as the only means to address their grievances.
Okay, so Mr. Gardee, help equip all of us so we are all on the same page with this. What are the key things to watch for then?
Well, radicalization towards criminal violence, as we've seen from cases that have come to light publicly and as research tells us, there doesn't seem to be a single trajectory that leads a person from being an active and engaged member of society towards somebody who then espouses, endorses, or supports criminal violence. We've seen people who come from a variety of different national, ethnic, religious backgrounds, age levels, and so forth, socioeconomic status, and so on. But that said, there's still a lot that can be done to help make sure that the message of violent extremism doesn't find traction here. And that includes, first and foremost, well, firstly, ensuring that Canadian Muslims understand what their rights are here in Canada, as well as what their responsibilities are as active and engaged citizens, that it's not a zero-sum game. Right. We also need to ensure that there's promotion of civic engagement at all levels of the community, at all levels of society. There also need to be safe spaces created where people can come forward and air their grievances in a forum where they feel safe and comfortable, and where those grievances and those energies and emotions can be channeled into more positive, proactive, and legal means to address their grievances.
So, Mr. Gardee,
and lastly, there's...
Yes, go ahead.
Lastly, there's the aspect of media engagement as well, because there's a media component to this as well, ensuring that Canadian Muslims and Islam itself is not conflated with the message of violent extremism and terrorism, to challenge that narrative, because that's exactly the narrative, Jacqueline, that the violent extremists prey on. They use that as propaganda to say, see, the problem is that they will never accept you, that no matter how you try to integrate, that the West is somehow at war with Islam. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who would use that same cut and paste methodology to promote anti-Muslim bias and hatred. So you have them sort of in a vicious cycle feeding off of one another. And it's important that we break and interrupt that and challenge those cut and paste interpretations and really to debunk and demystify the messages and propaganda of violent extremists on the one end of the spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum of those people who would try and attempt to marginalize and stigmatize Canadian Muslims. Okay,
no, I love that you addressed some of the solutions there as well. And just quickly, where can we access this handbook?
The handbook is available online. It'll be on our website, NCCM, that's N as in November, CCM as in Mike.ca, and also on the Islamic Social Services Association website as well.
Okay, Ihsaan Gardee, good of you to take the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.